I have a question for you, Natalie Morales.
Okay.
Do you think that deep down there might be something wrong with you and me?
Yes. I mean, look, something's wrong with everybody, but
Yeah,
particularly with you and me.
like
Uh,
deeply.
yeah, I think it's why we connect, and we probably see it in each other,
Hmm.
and not only want to take care of each other with that, but also a plethora of things. We want to blame the other person,
Yeah.
want to feel better because
Yeah.
yeah. I think it's a very useful friendship tool.
I
Yeah.
know. I know. I feel very confident about one thing, which is that um, when we were a couple of months into the pandemic and I was feeling like I'm feeling creative, I'm feeling inspired. I felt like I had to hide that from my friends because when I got on the phone and Zooms and Marco Polos with my friends, they were starting to basically tell me how they were just feeling spiritually crushed and not compelled to make art. And I was making them feel bad about the fact that I was feeling like revved up and ready to go. And I remembered, even though you and I weren't that close at that moment, I was like, I have to call Natalie because I have a feeling she's going to be ready to go make a movie in the middle of this.
Well, maybe we have this in common. Like when I'm depressed is
Mm.
when I make stuff. Like I get very active when I am sad. um, Whenever I've written songs, it's always because I'm mad or sad. I think maybe a lot of songwriters have that in common. But yeah, like whenever I've made stuff and been inspired to make things is when I'm feeling stuck or sad. And how much more stuck or sad could you have felt than the whole world in like April of last year? Because
And I was like, we're going to make a movie. And you were like, that's so great. Where's the script? I was like, I don't have one.
yeah, it was a cool process coming up with the characters. Do you remember how we did that?
No.
You were just like, we decided that we would be like, you would go off and write a thing about Adam.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, I
I
remember.
would go
Yeah,
off
yeah.
and name my character
Name her. Yep.
and like and write a little bio about her. And I don't know what your process or idea was with that, but mine was like not entirely stream of consciousness because I did put some editorial thought into it,
Mm-hmm.
but mostly I was like, what, speak to me,
Mm-hmm.
spirits, world, what should I do here? Who is this person? And it all came really naturally. It's I mean, it's very cheesy to be like, oh, this character actually existed to me, but it sort of just it came from somewhere. I don't know where, but it came from somewhere for
I
me.
remember you sent me that thing, and I was like, this is it. And I don't think we deviated very far from the
No.
character bullets that you put out in that first thing you sent me.
Yeah, I don't think we did either. And neither from yours, which I thought was so cool. We basically built the movie around the two people instead of
Yeah.
around any kind of plot or anything. I think it's
The
so
thing
cool.
is, when I think about this movie, um, I have this feeling of like the only way I can describe it is like the first time I went to London, I walked into the street and I forgot that they drive on the other side of the street and I almost got killed. Um, and I think very similarly about this movie of like, I think we walked fairly confidently into this movie, or at least with not a ton of fear. But we had so little to go into this movie with, like a very sparse outline.
Yeah.
And the plot points were not that,
No, not super tight. No.
not a lot, not a lot. And I think that, I mean, now that I'm looking back, I'm like, I think we basically put a lot of credence into the fact that you and I would hopefully get our Harry and Sally on chemistry in some way, shape, or form in this movie, and that would buoy it. But that is not smart when I look back at it. It's like not a smart way to enter a movie.
Listen, this is not my first experience working with you, but my first experience working with you in this way and making
definitely.
This is not how you work all the time.
I mean, I think I try to convince you that like, oh yeah, I go into, you know, I'm always saying like, that's how I made Blue Jay with Sarah Paulson. That's how I always get everybody. And I'm like, I did it with Paulson and we did it, you know?
Yeah.
But now that we're here, I can definitely say that this is the least amount of movie on paper that I've ever gone into with and come out with something that I deem watchable.
Well, maybe something else that we have in common, Mark, is that like, everything I've ever done, especially when I was younger, was just full bravado, just so much bravado. And I think maybe you're like that too.
I'm 100% like that.
Let's jump in the deep end and then figure it out. And I'll probably be fine. And if I'm not, it would have been fun anyway.
Well, you were like that when we did our first Room 104 episode, because, you know, you and I were starting to become friends and I had a really good sense spiritually. I was like, we're going to be buds. We're creatively kindred spirits. We're both divers into the deep end. That's what's required in Room 104. You're going to shoot an episode in like 2 days. And I remember when you came in, it was like you had directed some stuff, but not a lot. This is going to be like
I'm not a full-length TV show, no.
Yeah. It's going to be your first like premium half-hour thing. And I remember the whole crew was all just like, if she's just so confident and they thought you were so experienced. And I'm like, I'm not going to tell them that like she has done this before. But I think that shit, I think it totally works. I think it carries the train, you know, and it gets you going. And I think it kind of helped us in this movie, because I think that there were these moments in like day 1 or 2 of filming this where we could have, with less bravado behind us, been like, I don't know, is this gonna happen?
There's no room for doubt. There is room for I don't know.
Yeah.
Can you help me? Those should always be there. Like I feel like, especially in Room 104, there was so much, not as much in my first episode, but in the second episode I directed, I had never, for Foam Party, I had never done so many of the things that we did in that.
You'd never done an 80s horror TV episode with foam filling a hotel room?
No. And I didn't, I mean, my favorite scene in the whole movie is the one we wrote like an hour before we shot it. and it was my favorite process of doing that, because we had just shot in that morning, and then we took a break in the middle of the day to eat lunch, and then we were like, all right, we're gonna hop on and we're gonna figure this out. And we did, and it turned out to be, I think, my favorite scene in the whole thing. And you know what else I like about this is that, yes, it's the least written thing. You know this about me. You know I'm a big Buster Keaton fan, right?
Yes.
So in all of the biographies that I've read about him, his whole process was like, figure out the beginning of the movie and the end of the movie, and then the middle we'll sort it out. Like, that's what you start with. And everybody's talented enough and smart enough that they know how to fill in the rest. Mm-hmm. And I was always like, that's a crazy way to make it. and we literally shot the end first and figured it out like that, exactly like that, which is so fun, I think.
I remember that scene you're talking about, and I remember the feeling of shooting that scene, and it's, I think, endemic to the whole process and the way we made this movie. And I think why I loved making this movie with you so much. And I've sent you so many Marco Polos telling you that. I wish we could just dump our Marco Polos, which is just like basically once every 4 or 5 days since we wrapped this movie, either you or I remember how much fun we had making this movie, either because we're like not having as much fun in the current project we're in or something. And we're just like, I miss you. I love you. I'm so glad we made this movie. It's just a whole litany of those things. But I think to that end, we were falling in love with this movie while we were making it, which I think is really important. As opposed to, you're normally falling in love with a movie while you're writing it. And then you, like any good marriage, you fall out of love. And then in your second draft, you have to rekindle, and then you fall out of love and you rekindle in your third draft. And by the time you shoot the movie, you're in a tough, nice marriage that's been through therapy 10 times. And it just doesn't have that same thing.
Mhm.
Creatively speaking, you and I made this movie on our second date at
Yeah.
the rising energy of it all. And I think that as an artist, I've been thinking more and more about that thing you're talking about, like diving off the deep end without knowing what's happening, like Buster Keaton. If you know the beginning and the end, go in. I think I want to do more and more of that to get that energy.
Well, yeah, it's so interesting because I always correlated acting immediately with being unprepared. But
Mm,
that wasn't necessarily the case here. It was we acted, we had the tools to make what we wanted to make, and we
mm.
just made it almost immediately.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was new for me. It was like, it's new for me to not go over and doubt and whatever, and it's new for me to not, I mean, and I guess it's like, hopefully it's the same as good improv in that like there is something golden
Yeah.
about capturing the thing in the moment if you're prepared, and if you have that base to start from it. And we did have an idea of what we wanted to do, and I think really like what we were saying is like um really figuring out who the characters were made the rest of it so easy, because we knew who the characters were, and we knew what happened at the beginning and the end, and then we just had to collide it all.
Yes.
And
And
that
then we
was,
had a good editor, and that helped too.
and we had an incredible
Yeah.
editor. Yeah.
To thin out some of our talkiness, which
Yes.
also helped.
Yes.
Something else I've been thinking about as we're bringing this movie into the world is the nature of platonic love, which is a big part of this movie. And it's a big part of my life because of, my relationship with Jay and
Mhm.
how deeply entrenched we are. And I know you have a lot of it in the way that you've talked to me about your family members, some of your cousins that you've been really close with through the years. Um, and I never even thought about when we were making this movie that essentially we were making a romantic comedy without romance,
Mhm.
that there would just be hopefully enough there in the platonic relationship that it would be just as valuable to people.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think it was that part of this was intentional. It was just um understood, and maybe it's because you and I sort of shared that already between us.
Yeah, we have an excitable platonic connection,
Yeah.
which has tones of the same thing, which is like a giddiness and a fun and a jocular, like I'm gonna tease you into this, which normally comes in a romantic comedy. But it's
Right. And a
platonic.
mutual appreciation, and yeah.
Yes, that's very interesting.
Yeah, and it wasn't something that I thought of before, but then in the process of making it and editing it and working on it, it was something that I've been thinking about ever since, and that I really don't know if I've ever seen it. I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, there's been tons of stories about friendship, of course, but like
Yeah.
having that be the thing, and like
Mhm.
and especially between a man and a woman, where it isn't Harry met Sally, and it
Yeah.
isn't that they can't be friends.
Yeah.
And also all of the intricacies of being somebody's friend, and what that means, and when it gets messy, and when it crosses lines, and when it's like, I don't know if this is healthy. And all of those things are
Yeah.
are are things that happen to all of us, I think, in our various friendships. I mean, like, I think it is different when someone's your family, like how you were talking about with Jay, or like with my cousin, because for the most part, it's a guarantee that, like, even if you fight, you'll always be family, right? But
Yep.
like, maybe not for everybody, but for the most part. And
Okay.
with friends, or with like people that you choose to have in your life, that's not a guarantee.
Yeah, they go
And
away.
so there's this really, it's this moment for two people where they have to, if things go wrong, or if there's conflict, where you have to decide whether it's worth it to keep this thing you don't have to keep. And it's a two-person decision. It's never a one-person decision. And that's a really interesting thing to explore. Still, to me, I still think about that.
Yeah. I didn't think about when you brought up this thing about the boundaries of a friendship, because in my marriage with Katie, like there really are no boundaries, and there really aren't to be expected in boundaries. Like, you know, everything can be discussed and you don't really cross these kind of boundaries. That's what a marriage is. But in some ways, you think about the delicacy of a platonic friendship, and it should be almost better fodder for a movie than a romantic relationship, is because there are more pitfalls, more
Yeah.
places you can step in shit along the way, you know, for a friend to reach out too early and say I love you is almost weirder than in a romantic relationship.
Yeah,
But you know,
absolutely.
it's scare the shit out of somebody with that, you know.
Yes, I'm sure I have.
Yeah, I'm sure we
Yeah.
have. All right, last question I have for you. I
Okay.
was asking questions because I just feel like it. Drunk,
Hmm.
playing drunk. Um, for those who haven't seen the film, there's this wonderful drunk scene in the movie. Have you done this before? Did you like put something on the lips to taste it? Did you? What's
Oh, you
your?
mean that I have two shots? Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't say anything, but yeah,
Two full shots?
two full
Yes.
shots. Yeah.
I wouldn't say that made me drunk, but it certainly reminded me of the lower inhibitions
Mm.
that happen when you are drunk. No, I've never done it before. Um, and I found it fun. Although
It's
who
one of
knows
my favorite things I've seen you do.
who knows if people will find it insufferable. I hope not. But
Oh,
I always admire Jimmy Stewart's drunk scene in is it Philadelphia Story? That's so good. It might be. Um, and I always thought that was so good. But yeah, you know when how annoying it is when people play drunk and it's not good. So I was definitely, the shots were more for that, more to calm my nerves about being annoying than it was to feel drunk.
yeah. No, I think it was like some of the most fun I've had watching you do stuff. And it was definitely some of the most fun watching that scene and editing that thing. And I still kind of wish that scene was a little longer. I know we had to do what we had to do for plot propulsion
Yeah, yeah.
and pacing and all the stuff that you have to do. But I'm hopefully there'll be some extended versions of that, because there was some.
Well, thanks. I could tell in the edit with Aleshka, there was times where I was like, nah, acting, but take like I could tell, right? And even if she couldn't, I was like, nah, I don't like that. But with you, it was really, and maybe it's because and by the way, I don't want to overrepresent our friendship. It's not like we were super tight friends before
Nope.
this started at all. In fact, the most we worked together is that you wrote an episode of Room 104, and then actually both episodes that I did you
Yep.
wrote, and but we never worked hand in hand together every day or anything like that. And I think maybe before that we'd hung out at like parties or social
Yeah.
events a
You
few
come to
times
my weird
before.
birthday party where I make everybody share their feelings. Yeah.
Yes, which was so wonderful.
Yeah.
um and truly a moment of platonic falling in love with you, because I was like, oh, this is so great, because my weird birthday parties are making my friends do a talent show, so
Yeah.
not too far off.
Right there in the zone. But
um
you're right. Our connection before we made this movie was it was way deeper than the minutes spent together
yes,
should
yeah,
have earned.
yeah. And I'm so thankful for that, even though I don't quite understand why. But I'm really thankful for that, because like I was saying, doing this with you specifically, even though those challenges that I was talking about earlier, um, it was easy to connect with you. And I don't know that, I really don't think that could have been anybody. I really don't think, or even a super talented actor, or anybody. Like it had so much to do with looking into your eyes and knowing that you were there with me, and trusting each other, that made this in any way good, I think.
I have a big old samesies on that on my end, because I mean, you and I, we haven't talked about this yet, but you and I both had our own set of challenges, not only due to the nature of how this movie was filmed and the self-conscious nature of that, but the fact that we were both doing at least half or more of this movie in Spanish, which we
Right.
both are not fully comfortable in. And even though your Spanish skills are way better than mine, your character should have been better in Spanish than you technically are. And my character needed to be a little better than I was. So we were both reaching for that. So there was definitely that feeling. I felt nervous about, like, I'm kind of trying to do a two-hander movie that's based upon chemistry anyway. And there are these natural impediments of, like, I'm speaking in my second language in an artificially filmed environment.
Right.
And I was very, very glad to have your warmth on the other end of that. That was very
Yeah,
nice.
I forget that we did more than half of this in Spanish all the time, and
Cariño.
so crazy
Yeah.
that is, and also makes me like so happy because it's such a big part of my life and hasn't been a big part of my career, um, because of so many reasons, most of which are not great. But it was my first language, and so much of being the daughter of refugees or the spawn of immigrants in this country is about denying or forgetting what you came from in order to fit in into this world and in order to be successful. And so there was such a big part of my brain and life devoted to not speaking Spanish or seeming too Latina or whatever in order to succeed. And to be honest, it was what worked for a while, and only in the last, maybe honestly, a year, 2 years have I been like, oh my God, I didn't even realize how much code switching I'd been doing my whole life. And it's so nice. It's almost like a homecoming to do something in like my actual first language, even though I've lost the ability to. I speak Spanish fluently, but it's still not like my most comfortable language. It's now English, but it's so nice to get back into the rhythm of that and to make a movie that like my family who doesn't speak Spanish will understand and like really understand, and not have to, see it in subtitles only or in like or dubbed with somebody else's voice.
Yeah.
They're hearing me, and they're hearing me speak what I spoke when I was a baby. And there's something really special about that for me.
Wow. Two things occur to me when you say that. The first is that when you say it that way so articulately, it makes me realize now what I was thinking when you were first starting to speak Spanish in this movie, which is that I don't know why Natalie is nervous to speak Spanish. Her Spanish is incredible. It's great. Why is she so insecure about this? But now it makes perfect sense of you having some transition, just growing pains of getting back into that skin and feeling that on screen of that person you put away for a
Yeah.
while and bringing it front and center is amazing. And second, I would so love to be able to take credit for seeing that you needed that and have serving this up. Did not even think about that for 1 second, but
I didn't know I needed it
yeah.
either. It's really, I mean, that's what it's about, man. It's growth.
Yeah.
It's
Trust in that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really, really glad you said yes to making this movie.
I'm really glad you thought of me. I remember the text where you text me, you're like, can you speak Spanish? Like, yeah. And you're
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna call you soon. I was like,
I'm telling you, we're making a movie. Well, there's a bunch of people out there who I don't think have seen this movie yet, so we should not tell them too much more about it.
yeah.
I think since we are here, you should maybe do us the honor, if you don't mind, of giving us a tail slate with your slate back there.
Okay.
I mean, that's basically how we did it, right?
Yeah, this was, I guess, our last scene because I didn't erase anything. What day does that say? 6/28/20. There we go.
Language lessons. Wait, I talked over it. I blew it. Do it again.
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Bam.